Moving to New Zealand is no mean feat. There's so much planning involved. It's a massive deal. You have to sell your house, you have to tell the kids' school, you have to tell the kids, you have to maybe get your cats and put them in a shipping thing and bring them over. The last thing you're expecting is to receive major news when you're just about to get on the flight to start your new life in New Zealand.
On Saturday morning, I got a call from my boss that said there might be some hiccups. Thursday morning, that company let me go.
In this week's episode, you're going to meet Andrew. Andrew is in New Zealand on a student visa. He's with his wife, he's with his kids. They're living in Hamilton. They've got a whole new life, and he's going to tell you how that life in New Zealand has turned out.
It's a Drama, coming to you from Taranaki, New Zealand.
Hello.
Daddy, I love him!
Mother thanks you.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
So, hello, Andrew, and welcome to the podcast. So happy to have you here with me this morning. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Crazy to be here, considering how many episodes we've listened to, and then here I am now.
Yeah.
A little starstruck.
So can you just jump straight in and just tell us who you are and a little bit about your family, where you've come from, where you're sitting right now. Let's just take us right up to date, and then we'll get deep into your story. But tell everyone who you are.
Yep. Andrew Fry, longtime listener, first-time podcaster. My wife, Stacy, daughter, Audrey, is 11, almost 12, and Elijah is 7, almost 8. 4 of us, we have 2 cats, Poppy and Mia, who also joined us on this journey. And we arrived here in New Zealand in February of this year after probably, I'd say, about 2 years of a full-on effort and maybe a year of kind of contemplation for that. Yeah, I'm sitting here currently at the University of Waikato, where I am a graduate student. That is how we arrived here, was on my student visa. My wife is on a partner of a work visa, but I'm a student, so it's a little bit different. And then the kids are here kind of on dependence of me. So it's all kind of resting on my shoulders here at the university, which is where I'm sitting now. Got class in a few hours, so.
No pressure then. No pressure that it's all resting on your shoulders.
Yeah.
So where did you come from? Whereabouts? You're obviously American. Whereabouts did you come from?
Yeah. We are from Indiana, Indianapolis specifically. We lived pretty much downtown. It's an area called the Near East Side, which is roughly Indianapolis. It's not a terribly large city, but we were kind of right on the outside of it in a wonderful neighborhood. We loved that place. It was really hard leaving it. I had really put down roots there since I think when it's 2013 is when we first moved to that area. And we had 2 homes throughout that area and lots of time, lots of memories, lots of friends. So yeah, we're from Indianapolis, Midwest. For those listening to the podcast that aren't in the US, that's one thing I've learned here is a lot of people don't really know where things are in the US. It's just kind of like this big amorphous place. So we generally just say we're about 3 to 4 hours southeast of Chicago. Most people know where Chicago is. Right. Or have heard of it.
Yeah. So first of all, can I just say, I love your daughter's name. I absolutely love the name Audrey. It's just beautiful. It's a lovely name, and Elijah too. But yeah, I particularly like the name Audrey. So you are, I think you are, in fact, you are, I know you are our first student to come on the podcast, someone who's come over and been on the podcast that is on a student visa. So that's really interesting to me. So first of all, the other thing that stands out as well, and quite a few people say this, and I understand, is because we said the same thing. When you talk about back in America, you always talk about it with fun. I can see that you're talking about it with fondness. It was obviously a very special place to you. You had lots of friends. Sounds like is it a city or a town? It sounds like when you say downtown in Indianapolis, it just sounds, well, because it's American, it just sounds good, you know.
Real city folk. Yeah,
you talk about it with fondness. So there you are in the US, in this great place with all these lovely friends. Why did you up and leave? Why New Zealand?
Well, I can't remember if it was on an episode of this podcast or another podcast or somewhere we were reading in our journey, but there's kind of a push and a pull, right? So there's a push away from where we were at, the environment we were in, or what we saw kind of or thought was possibly coming. And so there's a push away, and then there's a pull too. So I feel like there's kind of two separate topics there, two separate things. So for us, the push away was just generally, I mean, there's politics to it, there's financial reasons to it, there's just for us, it was really just taking a hard look at, is the future that we kind of see, these things that are starting to develop, is that the environment we really want to continue to kind of struggle through and have our kids struggle through? Kind of, you could start to see the impact it was having on the kids. And it was just kind of like, yeah, this isn't probably the future we want for them. And then there's a pull. So for us, we kind of sat down and made like a list of different things that places should have, or would be nice to have, or have to have, that kind of a thing. And so we just started kind of writing down ideas of, places we might want to go, if they had any of these benefits, or, who checked off the most boxes, kind of thing. And so we looked at Australia, we looked at Ireland, we looked at the UK, we looked at Canada, we looked at Mexico, we looked at lots of places, because there are a lot of places where, your dollar can go more, right? We talked a lot on the podcast about conversion rates and things. So there's places where you could go and your money would put you in a better place, but it may not have all these other things. And so just when looking at the whole picture, all the different check boxes, must have, nice to have, should have, those kind of things, New Zealand checked off most of those boxes for us. And so that's when we really decided that's where we wanted to be pulled towards. So for us, it really just started with taking a look and saying, we kind of want a better future for our kids. And the poll here really kind of fulfilled some of that, as well as a better future for ourselves. So that led to the whole university conversation as well.
So what were you doing back in Indianapolis? What jobs did you and Stacey have?
So Stacey was a licensed mental health counselor in LMHC, worked specifically with kind of a lot of trauma-based therapy, some relationship therapy. A lot of her earlier experience was more in addictions and therapy like that. So she has her master's in professional counseling. So she had her own private practice and had been running her own private practice as a therapist for a couple years at least. Sorry, Stacey, if I get the times wrong. I was kind of in the corporate world, working as like an operations and proposal manager for a global tech company. And, working had a pretty flexible work environment before COVID hit. So then when COVID did hit, it was kind of easy for both of us to just work from home. So we were both homebodies, but kind of office mates, really, right? Two separate things. So she had her business and I was doing my work, and that was it. And the kids went to school, and, pretty typical day in, day out for us.
Mm. So before we jump into, do you know what? I love doing these podcasts. I just feel like, I feel so privileged that you're sitting opposite me sharing your story. So thank you, first of all. But before I jump into why, how you came to New Zealand on your master's degree and things like that at the university, I just want to just go back to, because you did say we could see that it was impacting the kids. And obviously you and Stacey, with Stacey, in therapy, being a therapist and things like that, you would be on the lookout for things like this. But what kind of, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of things that came up with the kids that you thought, oh, hang on a minute, this isn't right?
I think there's a couple different things, and I'm going to try not to get too personal with it. I mean, we're sharing and being a little vulnerable. I mean, obviously it's really tough to talk about, because I know there's other people in similar situations still who are trying to get here. So I'm going to try to be sensitive to everything. But for us, there were a few big points. One of the big ones was just gun violence. When our kids are having weekly active shooter drills, and there's just kind of that looming over them constantly, they're having more drills to prepare for that than they are for other things in life, or even just tornado or fire drills or things like that. That was pretty distressing. The other part is that Audrey, the oldest, is neurodivergent and has a couple different things that kind of complicate that. So that looming anxiety, which is not doing well for her mental health. Also, her neurodivergence was kind of caught a little later in her life. So the environment at school wasn't as not catering, but it wasn't a supportive or conducive environment for that. I mean, there were attempts were made, and I will give the school credit for that. But I think a lot of times the baggage that came with just having spent so long with some of those teachers and other students and peers and neighbors knew Audrey as Audrey and just kind of credited those things to more of an attitude, or kind of held it against her a little bit more than they would have if she had just come in and been like, oh, by the way, I have these things going on. So I think both of those things in tandem was just really not making it to where she felt like she could go to school and learn. She didn't feel safe at school. She didn't feel comfortable at school. She's a brilliant, very bright kid, but just in that environment wasn't either being challenged academically, but then was being challenged socially and emotionally. And so it was just a huge disconnect there. For us also, the youngest, Elijah, he was really he's still showing it, just kind of a pandemic baby where, he hit, I don't know exact ages, but he spent a large time of formative development between like pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, or pre-K and year one, just at home with us. So his kind of, he lost a lot of that early social development and is just much more comfortable with mom and dad and at home, and doesn't like to go out and do things, doesn't like large crowds, that kind of a thing. So when he actually started going into school, it was a little bit overwhelming. And so it was just not a great environment for him there either. We don't homeschool him now. He's kind of bounced back from that. But at the time, it was just like a feeling of both our kids in school, not feeling safe, not feeling comfortable. And for the oldest, it had a lot to do with just kind of gun violence, and then just her neurodivergence, as well as just the environment of the state of Indiana, doing its best to kind of regulate against just basic human rights, and her not feeling safe and comfortable there either in that environment, where she didn't feel like her rights and personal choices were being respected, even at 10 11 years old, and not feeling very hopeful for the future as she continued to grow up. So
thank you so much for sharing that. And that was, and thank you, Audrey and Elijah, for letting your dad share that, because it's one of those things that I'm sure many parents, like you say, are going through. Well, we know they're going through similar situations, and it must just feel so desperate, because, no matter how happy you are and how pretty your town is and how many good friends you've got, if your kids are coming home and they're not happy, it just breaks your heart, doesn't it? It's just awful. So were you and Stacey both, I promise I'll get into the New Zealand thing in a minute, but were you and Stacey both like on the same page? You both just said, look, we are leaving? Or was one of you going, well, maybe we can make it work? But how did that look? You're smiling.
It kind of waffled back and forth. I had friends who moved here from Colorado like 12 years ago. So I knew of people who had moved from the US to New Zealand. And back then it was just like, okay, these are friends, they moved here. And it didn't seem the same as it did, fast forward 10, 11 years when we're like, well, oh yeah. So I had kind of like, that'd be cool, right? 12 years ago, I was like, oh, sweet. Friends moved there. Seems like a nice place. Seems fun. And then my wife's cousin, actually, her and her husband and their family kind of bounced back and forth between the US and living here. They're both doctors. And then it was, I think, New Year's Eve, 2019, when we were at a family thing with them, and they were about to move back here permanently. And so I think they really put the bug in Stacey's ear that is kind of what led to a lot of this, right? So I didn't think it was ever a realistic thing. I'm just like, in the back of my mind, it's cool. It's a almost more of a fantasy. And then I guess after talking with them and, feeling a lot of the same things as well, I was like, oh, wow, that does sound like a better place. New Zealand is lovely, not to make it out as magical Christmas land, but when you start talking to people, that energy, that enthusiasm is there. So there is a magic to it. And I think that really stuck with Stacey. And then as things started to develop socially, politically within the US, within Indiana, it was really kind of like, what if we do it? What if we go? What if we get out of here? So again, it wasn't directly necessarily New Zealand, but it was like we knew people that had, I don't want to say escaped, but had just started a new adventure somewhere else.
Yes.
And so we kind of had those connections here, which is another thing that was on our list when we were checking that off. So it waffled back and forth of, well, let's check this out. It was less about let's see the results of this next election, because elections change and people get elected, people get voted out, that kind of a thing. So it wasn't any one individual candidate election, things like that led to it. It was just kind of this general feeling and sense that the system wasn't going to fix itself. It was just going to kind of keep spiraling into this broken state that we didn't want to be in. And so we kind of waffled back and forth of like, can we, can't we, should we, shouldn't we? And it was, I think, it was surprising to me when she first came up with the idea, but first came to me as kind of being willing and open to the idea. And I was like, sweet. And then we started exploring it. And I was like, this sounds like a lot of work. This sounds like a lot of stress, a lot of risk. So, I looked at it pretty logically and rationally and kind of got turned off to the idea after that kind of, risk and effort assessment. We were comfortable. We had friends, we had family, we had roots that we had put down. And so she started pushing, and then I was like, okay, well, then we explored it more. And then I think it really was COVID that kind of like reset that for us, which was just, let's do it. If we can come together as just like a little family unit of 4 and make it just ourselves, because we, at that time, you detach from a lot of these social things. You're not going out. So everyone kind of was forced into that situation. And it really became just like, here we are, we're this family of 4. And if we can make it through this, yeah, sure, let's go somewhere. We can do it. If we don't necessarily need the grandparents or all these other things that are nice, that are lovely and we miss. But at the end of the day, it really is just, it's about the 4 of us and making it through together. So I think COVID kind of really coalesced our back and forthness together. And that's really when we started taking a big, harder look at doing it once the world got out of that.
And what did you say to the kids? Did you just say, how did they take it?
Elijah, being so young at the time, was just like, okay. Because again, being that sort of pandemic baby he was, it's like, if I'm with mom and dad and Audrey, cool. Yeah. He's pretty happy-go-lucky with that. No, he wasn't quite old enough to have the strong attachments that would make it difficult for him.
How old was he?
So this is 2023. So he was just 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
When he first found out, it's like 5. So he's kind of just grown up knowing that we were moving away at some point. But it never shied away from making friends or having fun. So he had friends, and he misses some of them, and that's perfectly natural and normal. I think Audrey took it a little bit more in stride at first, and then kind of waffled back and forth as well. Like, well, I have these really strong attachments with certain people, and I am struggling to balance that with the fact that it sounds exciting and kind of a restart, and I want to get away. There's people that she wanted to get away from just as much as she didn't want to leave other people too. Yeah. So she was kind of at that age where it was like, fresh start sounds nice, sounds exciting, but anxiety starts to take over in a kid's mind. And I would say in general, they both took it pretty well, better than we expected, better than some of the adults we told.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
So
It's not easy, is it, Andrew? It really isn't easy. And like you said, just touched on it then. It's a huge deal to move your family from one side of the world to the other. And had you been to New Zealand before, or was this no?
no. I think I'd only ever been out of the country once I think we took a trip to Cancun one time.
Yeah.
And that's the only time I'd ever been out of the country. I think flying here was only like my third or fourth flight ever in my life. So I was pretty localized to Indianapolis and kind of that area. But it wasn't anything new to me. I mean, the area I grew up in, I was pretty quick to move out of there. Pretty quick to kind of like always ready to try new things. So I wasn't risk averse to like going somewhere new per se. And then Stacey, her growing up experience, she moved from Indiana down to Tennessee when she was about Audrey's age. So she had some experience of just kind of like being uprooted as a kid. But still looks back on it more of as a positive experience rather than something that was pretty unsettling. So we had that to kind of go off of as well, where she had that personal connection with, I'm going to leave everything I know and I'm going to go start somewhere new. And that actually turned out really well for me. And it gave me life experience that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think that kind of helped drive some of that decision making as well for the kids.
So did you sell, did you own a home? Did you have to sell up, or what did you do with all your stuff and things like that?
Oh, we had, it was our second home in that area. So it's probably could throw a rock and hit our first house. But once we went up to 2 kids, we needed a larger space. And it was, I mean, I still miss that house. It was what we intended to like have the kids graduate high school and go off to college in that house. And then like eventually maybe someday sell it. But we put some blood and sweat and tears into the place. And I mean, I still remember the first time I saw it and I was like, oh, this is it. We're going to buy this house. So we owned it. When we decided to sell it, it sold pretty quick. It was kind of a very, very hot market. So I think we were in the right place at the right time when we sold it, to kind of get as much out of it as we did. And that again was kind of a big, we couldn't do it if we hadn't sold the house. Right. So we acknowledge and understand that privilege and position of privilege that we had to be able to do that. And then we knew we were coming roughly when we were coming, just because that was one of the things that drove us the student visa route, which we can get into later.
Yeah.
So we downsized pretty heavily, knowing what was coming into I sold a 3-bedroom duplex, half of a duplex, and rented that out for about 6 months while we spent a little more than 6 months. And we spent that 6 months kind of trying to live comfortably, but also getting rid of what we could. We're not taking this bookshelf. We weren't taking furniture, right? We had done the math and we had looked things up here and said it would cost more for us to ship everything we have than it would to just buy it all new there or new or used. So we, the Slack group, they're not paying me to say this. The Slack group was invaluable in some of that decision making. Just learning kind of what other people had done and experienced and being able to say, well, we know this works, so we're going to follow that kind of plan. So yeah, we condensed down to 4 of these large Plano trunks and some big duffels, bags for clothes and things. And over the course of that 6 months, just kind of kept condensing down and packing away what we were going to bring with us. We gave the kids each, I talked about this a little bit in the Slack group. We gave the kids each their own trunk. So it gave them a little bit of control of what they could and couldn't keep. It said, keep anything you want. It just has to fit in this trunk. And it can, yeah. So it helped them feel a little more, in control of their own destiny there with what they could and couldn't keep. And it taught them some valuable lessons too about like what is really important to them versus what they just want to throw in there because it's easier than deciding whether or not they're going to keep it. So yeah, we sold the house and then we spent about 6 months downsizing. And then we found out that the last visa had been approved and spent like the next 3 days completely getting rid of everything else. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because like you mentioned the Slack community, but we've got like Team Purge and then we've got Team everything, haven't we? Like, you know, and it's just like they've got these little jokes going on that they're in the back garden just burning all the stuff that they don't need. They don't do that, by the way. But yeah, it's an interesting one, the purge. As you know, we brought everything with us. And you know what, Andrew? Half of it's in the loft. We were talking about this the other night. I can't tell you what's in that loft. And we had the exact same conversation. I said to Bri, if you turned around to me and said now, by the way, Liz, the loft is empty and it's all gone, I sold it all, I couldn't tell you what was in there. And it would just... Looking back, I've got a lot of respect and admiration for people who are brave enough and just like that to just not have that attachment and just think, no, we don't need it. We can, like you say, you can get secondhand here when you get here. It's not a big deal. But also, you know, just like that very, very personal thing, like maybe letters or, you know, like a china cup that your grandma gave you or something. Yes, very well, bring that. But do you really need to hump a double bed over when you can just, you know, thing is, I wanted my double bed because my double bed's comfy. So you know, it's just, but no, I've got a lot of respect for you for doing that. Yeah. It's not easy.
It's not, it's a choice that you have to make that calculation in your own mind of like, is this worth it? And to us, nothing, there were a few pieces that were difficult, not just physically to get rid of, like heavy and old, but just like, yeah, it's like, oh, wow, somebody gave this to me. And I think one of the biggest, most fragile things we brought over was just like I think it's a grandmother clock. It's a hanging wall clock. But it fit in the bottom of the trunk.
Oh, okay. Is it one of those
bubble wrapped up really nice
thing on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We call those grandfather clocks. Yeah. Just like, oh, they're lovely. They're really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, we still haven't hung it up. It's just, it means more than its practical use because it was a gift. And there were a couple other gifts. It was like, this is really hard to get rid of. And there were other things too, but it was that calculation of this bed doesn't mean anything. Does this couch is like, okay, it's a couch. Yeah, there was really nothing that we were that critically attached to that you know couldn't be bolted down. That's probably not the correct expression, but
yeah, we're funny things, human beings, aren't we? The way that we give attachment to things and like, oh yeah, that's mine. You know, like sometimes if I get in my own head, I sit here sometimes and I think, right, we're just sitting in like a box made of wood, you know, and like we're so it's true though, isn't it? And we're so like, oh, this is our house, like, you know, it's like. That's a bit weird when you think about it. Just like if you really think about it, it's a bit weird, isn't it? How we just put ourselves in these little boxes and fill them with stuff and then just feel all like little moles, like, you know, like little, oh, nice and cozy and nice and secure. But it's just, yeah. So again, you've got to be a certain kind of person to step out of a box and just think, right, okay, let's get my family and let's get to the other side of the world. And not only that, let's sell my house that I thought I was going to retire in and grow old in. And sell that and let's shift over to the other side. So tell me why didn't you just come over? Because couldn't you come over on Stacey's ticket because she's in healthcare, or couldn't you come over as a tech person because you do techie things? Why? What? Tell me. Sorry, I don't know about tech, but what's the student thing? Tell me about that.
So we'd made the decision. We started listening to this podcast, joined the community. Doing all our research, looking all that stuff up, had consulted and started with New Zealand Shores. And that was kind of an option that was in the background there. I don't think at the time, counselor or therapist was on the tier 1 straight to residency list. I could be wrong, but I don't think it was. We kind of looked, because I think New Zealand Shores would have been like, well, this would be the option to go with. And it didn't feel trying to come over on the work visa is stressful, just as stressful as everything else. And we didn't really feel like we wanted to deal with that catch-22 of all the struggles. Because we tried, we were like, oh, you know, there's this job listing. Are you open to sponsoring a work visa? That kind of a thing. And like, it was just, it felt very demoralizing at first. We probably spent about a month doing that process where it was like, this isn't how we want to do it. And the complication of, one of us having to come over a few months early, while the others stayed back and then establish and do interviews and things like that and get settled in, didn't seem, it seemed feasible, but it wasn't like something we wanted to achieve really. So we looked at it hard and we're like, well, the whole point of this is new adventure. At the time, my work was open to me keeping my job and upskilling through a master's degree. And we really just felt the student visa route gave us a little more control over the whole situation. So it was a little bit of a kind of like a dual purpose thing where it's like, yeah, I'm going to upskill. We'll go get my master's degree, but then that also will allow us to do this thing. So I'm always cautious of saying it because I don't want it to feel like it was strictly an immigration scheme, although sometimes it does feel that way, where we pay for a master's degree and get a visa as a side bonus, or vice versa. So it just really for us, that route gave us a little more control. It felt like we knew we had more of a timeline that we could work with versus this sort of always on the edge of your seat anticipation of job offer this, or how long is it going to take before we find somebody to do it. And then once we do it, how long is it going to take? So we kind of felt a little more in the driver's seat with the student visa route. So that allowed us to really kind of say goodbye, say, well, we'll do it this and we'll start then. So we've got one more Christmas, one more set of birthdays, one more this, one more that, and just kind of give us that little bit of goodbye detachment time with the things that did matter. So I think for us, like I said, it just gave us a little more control, and took away some of the variability, not a lot, but enough, because it was still, I would say it's still pretty difficult.
So just to be clear then, so your job, you're doing the same job that you're doing, but you're just upscaling and getting a master's degree in it. Is that right?
Yes and no. So I guess I don't know that anybody listens to the podcast. It works for this company. So I'll just leave the name of the company out. But it's a large global technology company, that provides kind of software as a service. And it's global. There's a North America region, there's an APAC region, it's a global tech company. And so we spent months kind of working with my manager and my manager's manager, like the global boss, working with HR of like how this would work. Because on a student visa here in New Zealand, you can only work a maximum of 20 hours a week, part-time. So how is this going to work to kind of go down to part-time in a different region, in a different country? How am I going to get paid? All that stuff, working through all that through with HR. And then we were due to fly out from Indianapolis to LA on Sunday. On Saturday morning, I got a call from my boss that said there might be some hiccups.
Oh God.
That they were at the time. I will never forget it because I was like struggling to be able to process it because we were in the middle of like selling the car and selling this. Like there was a very specific set of sequence of events that needed to happen within a certain time for us to be able to like do what we needed to do and make our flights out on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like hearing this, and I'm like, I'm struggling to process what you're saying. So I spent most of the travel time kind of worrying and stressing about that. And then the day after we got here, so flew out of LA on Monday, crossed the international date line, get here on Wednesday morning, crashed Wednesday once we got it into town. Thursday morning, that company let me go.
No.
So the day after we arrived to this new country with the clothes on our back and the luggage, on top of having to find a place to live, finding a car, getting all this other stuff, now I've got to throw the job thing into the mix too. So that was definitely an interesting, unique twist that I wasn't anticipating.
Oh, Andrew, I didn't know
But
that.
I also, it's fine. In hindsight, it's like, it feels a little like good riddance, but at the time it was definitely a struggle, because that was a known entity, right? It was, I know how to do this job. I can do it 20 hours a week. I can do it well. And there's the balance with work and school and life. I know what it's going to pay. We can anticipate that kind of thing. So it was a pretty big wrinkle that we weren't anticipating, but I also wouldn't say it changed anything because we had discussed that beforehand. Like, well, what if my job says no? It's like, okay, then your job says no and we find something else. Like, it wasn't going to impact or affect our decision. It impacted our ability to plan around it. But we probably, if they had said from the outset, this isn't going to work, we still would have made the same decision, I think. Not I think, we definitely would have made the same decision. So I think I forget the original question. I'm sorry.
No, it's just, I didn't know they'd like, oh no. What did you say to Stacey? Who was that on the phone, Andrew? Oh, it's just my job. They've just fired me. That's all right. Keep going.
Something like that. Yeah.
I shouldn't laugh. That's
I think she was still, I got to look back and laugh at the absurdity of it all.
Isn't it always the way they just throw that in, just to test?
Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go. We're going to do it on extra hard mode. She was still asleep.
She was still asleep.
So I had a little bit of time to drink some coffee, scream at the clouds. It's fine.
Oh, so you obviously got another job because you're working. So
yeah, I did find something eventually. It was kind of tough at first. And she is still, we can get into that if there's time, but she is still without a job just due to red tape in transferring her accreditations and credentials. If there's anyone listening to the podcast who has an in with either NZAC or somebody with the New Zealand, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but we're still waiting on her qualifications and everything to transfer so she can have that certification, which is required for most of the jobs that she's applying to. So I just found mine, and it's really good. It's going well. Again, it's part-time. So that's something that you have to consider when you're doing that is you're not going to have a full-time job, which is okay. I don't know how I could manage a full-time job and this university workload. So I kind of understand why they make that restriction now.
It's now coming together because we did a podcast last week together. We did a live Zoom call in our community. We do a live Zoom call, me and Bri, with members of the community. And last week's one that we did was all about spending money in New Zealand, wasn't it? The cost of living. And I was blown away by the fact that you and your family of four are living on $250 a week groceries. That just, I cannot believe you're doing that. I'm so impressed. But now that you've told me your situation, I didn't know that Stacey wasn't working and you're only allowed to work 20 hours a week. The rest you're like one of those students, aren't you? Live off beans, they're just like eating noodles all day.
I mean, we do have beans, but like it's not terrible. I mean, we knew what our runway was, or what our runway is. We had the nest egg from selling the house because we knew that it would require some of that if I'm only working part-time. So yeah, I mean, we're bleeding out of that, and I'd like to stop that bleeding, but I don't know how much her having a job would change kind of that grocery part of our budget line, which again, the reason I volunteered was I had gotten the job finally. So I felt like we could establish really more of a budget. So I felt fresh off of budgeting and I was like, yeah, I'll volunteer because I just did one of those.
Yeah.
And it's flexible. There's some weeks, like I've posted a couple where there's some weeks where it's like $200 and we're good for the Sunday through Sunday kind of thing. And then there's others where it's probably up to $275 just because we splurge or we get a little of this, or we run out of something that we don't buy every week, but we need to buy like on a more monthly basis kind of a thing. So budgeting has definitely been interesting, but I'd still say all in all, we're still living probably within the same means, maybe just a little less comfortably.
So you come to New Zealand. Let me just quickly touch on, so on your visa, Stacey, tell me when Stacey can work, and are the kids paying international fees to be in school, or can they just come to school on your visa? Just quickly tell me how the visa looks.
So for her, she just has a straight partner of a work visa holder, so she can work right away, and she has no restrictions. It's for her, it's the same as if I had a full-time job that was sponsoring my visa.
Right.
Same for the kids. So once we found a more permanent place to live and not an Airbnb, we got them into schools and they're just there. For me, because I'm at a master's level, my student visa goes for the duration of the program, which is about a year. And then once that is up, it includes a 3-year post-study work visa.
Right.
So on top of the 1 year for school, there'll be another 3 years that we'll have on our work visa. So at that time that I graduate, I'll reapply for that. And then the kids and Stacy will reapply as the same kind of group package on the dependent part of that.
Right.
So the kids are just in school, thriving, and Stacy's allowed to work, no restrictions.
But she's just waiting for her qualifications to be
Waiting for those, yeah.
Yes.
Transferred, or if there is a second path we're working on now where she'll be able to earn a different set of qualifications, but still kind of within her realm and her skill set.
How is she? Is she okay? Is she okay with just going?
She's bored.
I was going to say
very bored.
Yeah. It's not easy, that, is it? Going from being a professional and then coming over and just, I'm sure she's not sitting there twiddling her thumbs, but it's a massive lifestyle change, isn't it? Just to.
Yeah. I mean, for us, we said for the first few months, it felt very much just like a stressful vacation.
Yeah.
So you're in this new place, you're kind of having fun, but you're also super stressed out. And I feel like that's still kind of a phase we're in until really we've got that second income coming.
Yeah.
Not just income, but something to do, feeling like you're contributing.
Yeah.
Getting back into the swing of things and having a rhythm. So, I mean, not that parenting isn't a full-time job, because it is, but I think that it's just boredom, and there's some frustration as well, right? There's 2 different positions on the tier 1 straight to residency green list that she could fulfill, but because of I don't think it's red tape, just I don't even want to call it bureaucracy, but the lack of sort of not enthusiasm, but lack of effort from the qualifications teams and departments that are supposed to be working on this. She's just sitting around for 6 months, unable to fulfill any of these roles. So like, we really need these people, but we're going to really drag our feet. This other organizations are going to really drag their feet on getting those qualifications. And it's like, there's a huge disconnect there. So it's supremely frustrating.
Yeah, I bet. I just want, I've got so many things I want to ask you, but I always think when I do these podcasts, it's like, just allow 3 hours, Liz, so you can just get in. But I'm aware that you've got work to do and you've got an appointment to meet. So the kids, how are they? Are they happy in school?
Oh yeah. I mean, not without normal issues for their age range and things like that, but I would definitely say, if we look at one of the reasons we wanted to move here was better for the kids, check that box off the list. Really thriving. Audrey is doing great at school, excelling in academically, being challenged academically. And I think part of that too is just there's a lot of new things for her to learn that she probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So she's learning the history in classes is a lot different. So she's got to catch up on that, but she's doing it brilliantly. And just, she goes to a smaller school as well than she's used to, but she chose that. She had the option and that's what she chose. And she's made friends. She's, there's other kids that probably aren't the nicest to her. But that's going to happen at any school you go to. You're not going to find a perfect environment where everyone's all hunky-dory, but she's just really thriving in that. And then Elijah, definitely the same. I think there was a little bit of struggle on Elijah's front academically, just because, the curriculum and style of teaching in the US is different than here. So he had a little bit of catching up to do, as well as them kind of being bumped up years, just because of their ages and when the terms started. But he's just, it really just needed a few months of him being in a routine versus as disruptive as moving here was. And he's doing great academically. Socially, this kid doesn't know a stranger. He just makes friends on the playground with anybody. He doesn't like when I say it, but I mean, this kid is Kiwi as, because he's barefoot everywhere. He'll put on shoes, get to school, and then the shoes just come off. he is trying all sorts of different inventions on toast. Just likes to make whatever he wants and puts it on toast. He's drinking tea. Like this kid is just really kind of becoming his own little Kiwi self. So it's really great to see from him that it's kind of really getting into it. Like the excitement was never there. Also, you should have seen this kid at Matariki. He loved everything about Matariki.
Really?
was amazing to him. So he really embraced that and grew quite a bit culturally and learning all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd say the kids are just doing great. Just great. And it's really lovely to see.
That's great, because I like what you just said earlier, because as you know, I make it a big point to let people know that exactly what you said earlier, it's not the land of milk and honey. You're not going to get here and it's just going to be like, ta-da, everything is just wonderful now. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's my mum always says it's not paradise, but it's close, sort of thing, but it's just that I remember vividly that feeling. When you just said that, I just thought, it just brought everything back. When you first arrive here and you're supposed to have this feeling of like, we're in New Zealand, like, let's get with us, let's get a camper and drive around. But all the time in your back of your mind, and Brian especially, you're thinking, well, how am I going to get a job? Like, where are we going to, what are the kids going to be like? Where are we going to live? Like, what's Stacey going to do? It's just, you want to be able to just go, we're here. But you can't. And that's reality. You're here, you're starting a new life. You've got it all to sort out, but what I will say to you as a reassurance is once Stacey's qualifications come through and she starts work and, everything it does start to fall into place. You just get that routine going but those first few months, they're tough, they're just, and that's normal, isn't it? You've come from the other side of the world, a completely different culture. It's just, everything's new. Like I say, Stacey's not working and just kids have got to make new friends. And it's a big readjustment, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah. And I think the planner that I am, foolhardily thought, with as much time as we had to plan and going the student visa route, we felt a little more in control, that things would fall into place kind of in certain ways and at certain times. And by and large, they have, but that time frame is just wildly different than I would have anticipated. So it takes time. We're 6 months in, somewhere around there, and things are starting to take shape. I think for us too, or at least for me personally, when we first started talking about it and making serious plans to make the move, I was like, well, okay, cool. The school will start hitting. A big kind of moving target, or not moving target, was we just wanted to be here by the time the World Cup happened, right?
Yeah.
As long as we can make it by the time the World Cup starts, right, we'll call it a success.
Yeah.
So, I took Audrey to the opening match up in Auckland, and it was just, that was a huge sigh. I mean, mentally just being like, we did the thing. We're here. We made it. It was kind of that processing of what I thought I was going to get at the airport when we landed.
Yes. Yeah.
But it took several months later before it finally just kind of hit me that we'd done the thing and could kind of breathe a little bit and enjoy it a little more than just feeling constantly like, gotta fix this, gotta do that. So
stories like that always bring a tear to my eye. And it's just it never leaves you. 14 years later, I can stand on our deck sometimes and I just say to Brian, can you believe we live in New Zealand? Yeah. It's so weird. It never leaves you, Andrew. Really,
that's good to hear, because I don't want to lose it, right? I'll step out in the backyard to take the trash out and look up and just be like, wow. Because you can see stars all the time, every night, not unless there's clouds, but just there's some magic to it that I hope never goes away.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't gone away in years.
Awesome.
Yeah. And, I was talking to Tanya from the Slack group. I did a podcast with her a couple of days ago. And I said, what? She's come from England. And I said, what is it about New Zealand? Why New Zealand? And she said, Liz, it's a really difficult question. She said, because you have to be here. She's been here a year, bear in mind, she's a year in September, so a bit longer than you. But she just said, it just feels free. And I saw her face when she said that. And she just and I don't know free from what, she said, but it just feels free. And I was like, yeah, I get it. But she also said, you have to be here to get that feeling of like, yeah, I'm here. It's just.
Without getting too much into it from, what we talked about earlier, but there isn't that undercurrent of almost hostility, of pressure, of stress or whatever. So there's a freedom to kind of being here that it's not like you can do whatever you want, obviously, but just the speed, the approach to so many different things feels much more in line with kind of where we want to be. And it does take some conscious thought sometimes to allow yourself to take that deep breath and relax, that you don't have to worry about this, or yes, this is fine. It's okay to do this, or it's okay to feel that relief, right?
Oh, Andrew, before I let you go, because I've kept you now. We've got a couple of minutes left, but before I let you go, you're in the Tron. You're in Hamilton, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know why everyone talks bad about this place.
Tell me about Hamilton. I mean, yeah. What is it like?
I don't want to say it's flat. It's not as vertical. So like, we're city folk. I'm used to living in a more urban downtown environment. So the CBD is nice, but there's only a few tall buildings, kind of a feel. But it's almost like a Goldilocks little city. And I don't want to oversell this, but we didn't want to live in Auckland. We still don't want to live in Auckland. No offense to anyone in the Auckland group or Ryan or anybody. He's more Northland anyways, but Auckland it doesn't seem like it's for us. But we're close enough that if something's going on in Auckland, we're an hour and a half on a good day with traffic away, That's 2 hours if it's bad. We've got 45 minutes if we want to go out west to Raglan to the beach, or we can go out to Tarnana for like an hour and a half. We're close to Hobbiton. Like it feels really well centrally located. So we're close enough to whatever we'd like. The cost of living is probably lower than it would be in Auckland or Wellington or Christchurch. I don't know about Dunedin. That's a little too far south for Stacey. She wanted more sunshine. Don't want to get into that debate, but we love Hamilton. I think for us, it's definitely a little slower. There's less to do. It's more like pockets of which mall you're closest to, but it's still a great city. I don't know why people talk bad about it. It's cost of living is good, centrally located. It's beautiful. We're fairly close to the river, so it's got a big river running through the middle of it. Lovely city, lovely people. Could be happy living here longer term. So we don't know what the future holds, but if we're still in Hamilton and there's jobs for us here, could be perfectly happy.
Yeah, I must admit, I love Hamilton. I think it's a lovely city, and I love the fact that it's so close to Auckland. Have you been to the Art House Cinema there yet? Have you been to that little cinema, the little art house one? Can't remember.
In Hamilton?
Yeah. There's an art house cinema. It is the prettiest, loveliest cinema that you'll ever go to. It's like got all purple velvet curtains, and there's big seats where they serve you tea and coffee. I think you can have a glass of wine, and it's one of those like boutique cinemas.
Yeah.
It's upstairs somewhere in a mall, if I remember rightly. But we've been there a couple of times, and it's just a lovely night out. Really, I wish we had one of those in New Plymouth, but we haven't. And also the gardens, where you can go look around all the little parts of the world, like the India garden, Japanese garden, and it's just gorgeous.
And it's free.
I know.
For now, I think they're talking about making it not free for non-residents, but that's a whole other conversation. There's so many different things to do here. Playgrounds all over the place. So many different things to explore that, I think even more than a year out from now, we'll still be saying, oh yeah, we haven't done that yet. We need to try this. We need to do this. The gardens are a multi-visit experience where you have to go more than once to really appreciate it. But if you want to go to the Auckland Zoo, you can go to the Auckland Zoo. If you want to go hit up a beach, you can choose a direction and find a beach pretty quickly.
That sounds great. And you're happy? How's the university? Are you happy at university?
No, who likes school?
I could see a part 2 coming up here.
Yeah. I feel like I'm achieving my goals, right? I am learning some new things, which is great. I definitely probably feel I feel young, don't get me wrong, but I feel old sometimes in some of these classes because it definitely feels like some of these kids are coming straight out of their bachelor. So it's just like, you go from secondary and then you grab your bachelor's degree and then you just do your master's degree. So I feel a little older than a lot of the class.
Are you the oldest
it's
class?
I don't think so.
No.
There's a couple others, and it depends on the term as well. But yeah, I feel like I'm checking those boxes. I'm achieving those goals. Definitely feel like it's a valuable experience versus just I'm doing it to get a master's degree to my name, right? So I'm only 2 terms in, so there's only really 1 trimester left, and then an internship, and I'll be done.
Right. And do you just like turn up and go, like, I'm imagining you turn up and you go to a classroom and it's like all layered like this, like, like going back and the person at the front stands at the front and gives you all these lessons. Is that what it's like or not?
I mean, kind of. It's smaller. I could turn the camera around really quick and show.
Oh, let me have a look.
Yeah. All right, fine. Like so I'm just sitting at the front end of the class, and it's your pretty typical.
Yeah. See, that's how I imagined it. Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And it's a very short master's program. So it only takes a year, and there's only 2 papers. They call them papers, not courses. There's only 2 papers per term. So I'm really only on campus once or twice a week, which is not how I expected it at all, right? I thought I would be here Monday through Friday, taking all courses, different things. No, I'm here a couple days a week, and that's it. That's the other nice thing about Hamilton is that nothing is too far away. So I live probably on the opposite end of the city, so the northwest corner, and this is probably on the southeast corner.
Yeah.
The university, but it still is 15-minute drive, 30-minute bike ride, probably 20 to 40-minute bike ride, which I've done when the weather's nice enough. It's been raining a lot, but nothing in Hamilton is far away, and then Hamilton isn't far away from anything else either.
Oh, it's a great story. I love hearing people's story, and yours is fantastic because just to do that whole thing and come over as be a student, that must have been a big life-changing. If you're going to do it, you might as well go the full hog, mightn't you? Just change everything about your life. And you brought your cats over, okay? They're with you.
Yeah, those little. I can't curse, but yeah, they're here. I'm sorry, Stacy and kids, if you listen to this. I love our cats and they're great. But I still don't know if that math checks out in my head. But they're fine. They're great.
It's a hard one.
They took a week to kind of really get settled in and realize kind of what had happened. But I think they've forgiven us at this point based on the number of cuddles we've gotten. So
yeah. Oh, so and I know you found a rental that would take your cats and things like that, but
yeah.
Oh, again, it's a whole new topic, and I know that I can't keep you much longer because I've kept you an hour. But maybe you just come back and just do part 2 and just let's catch up when Stacey's working and just tell us how you're getting on. But
happy to do it.
I really, really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you so much for everything that you give to the Slack group, Andrew. Like I say, just joining in and just letting us all know, because it's all very well when you haven't moved here yet and you're all in that same boat, but the valuable stuff is when someone is here and you're like, what's it like? How are the kids and what the supermarket's like and things like that. It's just, so I really appreciate everything. Me and Brian really appreciate everything that you bring, and just for joining me on this podcast today.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys and the community. We really honestly, truly wouldn't be here without it. So
thank you. You get off to class now so that you're not late. Have you got your noodles in your bag, your pot noodle?
Yeah. No, I'll probably just skip. I don't know that it's in my budget today.
Okay, well, you give Stacey and the kids a big hug from me. And like I say, thank you for your time today and for joining us on the podcast. And I'll speak to you soon. Okay, bye Andrew.
I really hope you enjoyed that show as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're moving to New Zealand and you are interested in joining the Slack group, the private community group that we raved about and talked about on today's show, then you need to head over and get our free 5-day video guide. This is a video guide that sends you a video every day for 5 days, sharing some aspect of what life in New Zealand is like. It's absolutely free. And then when you get to the 5th day, you will be given the option of whether or not you want to join the private community, the one that we talked about. It's a fabulous, fabulous resource. I don't need to say anything more because you've already heard all about it. Go over, take the free 5-day video guide, get to day 5, and then you can decide whether or not you'd like to be a member and join our private community along with me and Brian and all those other fabulous people that are walking along the same path as you and making the move to New Zealand. So head on over to www.nzahead.com/free. Head on over to www.nzahead.com/free and get your free 5-day video guide. Get to day 5 and then you decide if you want to come and join us in our private membership group. I hope to see you on the other side. Imagine this, you move from America with your young family and your husband and you come all the way across the world and make a new life in New Zealand. You've been here only 4 months, you've rented a house, everything's going well, and then all of a sudden, a massive flood hits your house.
We're safe, our cat's safe. Let's just see what's going on tomorrow. So we sleep in the hotel, and the next day we go back to the house and it had completely flooded. So about a meter of water at least.
In this week's show, you're going to meet Ginger. Ginger is going to share with you what it's been like from start to finish when something so major happens, you're a new immigrant in the country, and Kiwi kindness really comes out to play.